He seems to have a genuinely good sense of humor, honestly, from what I've seen in interviews and stuff.
You got to. I mean, like, listen to that man's music. He made a song about areolas. Like, how do
That's
you not
true.
have a sense of humor in a
He,
song about areolas?
okay, so the way she used it, I almost want that to be a thing, man. Like it's like the female version of like "get off my dick." It's like "get off my
Yeah,
areola, get off
yeah.
my
Get on my
nuts, get off my
areola.
ass, get off like just get off me." You know,
Yeah,
like
like.
that's a great way to put it, man. Oh, that's great. Thank you for showing me that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
More
So
rappers need to talk about areolas in their music, is what we're trying to say.
absolutely. Welcome to After Listen, the music discovery and discussion podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Terrio.
And I'm Brandon Lee.
And today we're going to take a deep dive into Kansas City's own Tech N9ne,
Tech
aka
N9ne.
Tech N9ne, Tekka, all of them aliases. As always, you can check the show notes for song links. And before we get started into today's deep dive, we don't have any artist recommendations because this is going to be all about Tech N9ne and his illustrious career. But we do have to offer some disclaimers. Number one, we respect everyone's opinion, regardless of how wrong or awful it may be. Number two, this episode may feature explicit lyrics, depending on where we go with Tech N9ne. So you have been warned. And number three, we're just talking about the music. We don't care about their real life issues and how it impacts you personally. So we're just talking about the music and their career and where it takes us. Who knows? All right, let's get into it. Brandon Lee, it's all you, buddy.
Okay, so Aaron Dantes Yates, as he was given whenever he was born in 11/8/71, which is, I didn't realize this, but that's one day after my birthday. My birthday is a day before his, I guess, is the correct way to put that, which is kind of cool. But yeah, like Terrio alluded to in the intro, he's known under a couple different names. Of course, Tech N9ne, Tech N9ne, just Tech N9ne. It's one of the things he likes to do to shows. Yeah, he's one of my like all-time favorite artists. I believe I've talked about this. I know I've talked about it with you personally, but I believe I talked about this on one of our earlier episodes where he was really, one of the foundational blocks for my love of hip hop today.
Mm-hmm.
I used to, I believe it was Caribou Lou, probably around like, probably right around like 06, 07, like right whenever it came out. And my sister had it burnt on a CD with just a bunch of other random songs from different artists. And I like stole that from her. And it'd be like late at night, I'd be in the corner of my room, like the lights off with my little big stereo system I had. And I'd be playing it like just barely with like my ear pressed to the speaker so I could like hear it, right? With my parents wouldn't hear me. Yeah, just he's been a huge part of my hip hop listening pretty much my whole life. So just off the top, just going to give some of his credentials, right? So he has, to date, 2 gold albums, 5 platinum singles, one of which is as a featured artist, and 3 gold singles as well. He has 23 studio albums, 3 compilation albums, 9 EPs and counting, and according to Wikipedia, 409 guest appearances,
Good Lord.
which is a lot.
Yeah. So my thing with Tech N9ne, I've always seen him in passing, but I've never really listened to any of his music. So I've always kind of known about him tangentially. Like it was like, oh, featuring Tech N9ne. I was like, okay, I've seen this name, but it kind of put me off a little bit looking at some of his, artwork and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, I really didn't know what to think of who he was. But I mean, I respected his talent, but it was like one of those artists you kind of see, at least at the time for me, um, without listening to his music prior to this. I'll recognize the name, like, okay, that looks familiar. I remember seeing this person, but I had no idea of who he was, where he came from, all that stuff.
Those are all very good points. We're definitely here pretty soon. I'm going to talk about his, especially like early on in his career, his image that he kind of cultivated and how that affected how people viewed him, just like at large. But yeah, he's definitely known. I think a lot of people that like haven't really like listened to his actual stuff, just because he's been featured on such a wealth of different songs. From like smaller up and coming no name artists to huge mega stars, right, and everything in between. Yeah, it's definitely a big part of how or where most people have probably heard of him. If they like haven't listened to his stuff, is from some their favorite artist featured him on a track somewhere, and he, as Tech N9ne does, he probably killed it.
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, kind of you're like, oh, who is this guy?
Right.
He also has, I believe, he still claims this title as the most successful independent hip hop artist, just as far as like sales, like all time sales and stuff like that.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm gonna dive in. I'm gonna start with kind of just going through his discography here. So early on, like the early '90s, he was living with QD3, who I assume you're probably familiar with QD3.
Vaguely. So I heard that in one of his songs, like, QD3 did the beat. I was like, I know I've heard of this name somewhere before.
So he wasn't like huge producer or anything, but he worked a lot with like Tupac and Death Row.
Okay.
Yeah, like strictly for my Niggaz.
Okay.
I, I have to spell that out because I'm not allowed to say it.
Oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so he worked on that. So a lot of people don't know this, but Tech N9ne actually did a verse with Tupac because he was living with QD3, and while QD3 was working on that album, Tupac recorded "Thugs Get Lonely Too,"
hmm
which, if you don't know, it was part of a posthumous like compilation album that was released in like 2004 or five, I think. Eminem produced it. So he originally, like back in like '93 or four or whatever, recorded a verse for this song.
hmm
But whenever it was re-released for the posthumous compilation, Eminem helped produce it and like edited everything, and instead featured Nate Dogg. Um,
Yeah. So in one of your in one of the songs he mentioned that they did a
mhm.
song with Tupac. So I was like, okay. I didn't want to spoil anything. I said, but that I had to go find. So I actually did try to find it, and I did found a very bad audio quality
That was
version
the
of
only
that song.
reason I didn't include it, was because I found just like a single terrible audio quality, and I didn't. Yeah, it was one of those things where like, man, like
Yeah, but I had to hear it because like curiosity really got to me on that one. So I was like, okay, I got to hear this version because I heard the version with Nate Dogg, and I was just like, hold up. And the thing about those posthumous, I'm about to butcher this word, posthumous albums or whatever. There,
posthumous.
there we go. Uh, there's always like various different versions of that song.
Hmm.
I know Biggie has like about three or four different versions of the same song or verses from different songs chopped up into making a whole nother song entirely. So I heard the Nate Dogg version, but then I was like, okay, I want to hear the Tech version. So I did found a crappy Tech version, and man, I really wish that came out.
Yeah, it was never officially released, so that's probably why I assume there's no good
hmm
quality version online. He was also in the Anthem cipher. That was the one that I removed from the features playlist originally. You said
Okay.
you really liked,
hmm
just because the main reason I removed that one was because he had. I mean, it's a really cool. I mean, you got a lot of like old school, or not really old school. You got a lot of like big name still today rap artists doing a cipher, like back whenever they were like kind of early on in their careers, which is really dope.
hmm
But he only has like the one small verse, and there's like eight other dudes rapping. So I was like, yeah, it's really
Yeah.
cool, but it kind of takes away from what I was trying to go for in the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so he definitely had like even early on was already kind of like making these connections within the industry. Like I did say, he was really good friends with QD3. Seemed to be, from what I've heard in interviews and stuff, he seems to have lived with him for at least a short amount of time, if not for like, a couple years or something. Um, QD3 also helped produce several, like pretty much a lot, or maybe not, maybe like half or so of like the first and third albums that he came out with. The other main producer was Don Juan, and Don Juan pretty much did the entirety of his second album, The Worst. So I do these first three albums of his, I've kind of dubbed like pre-Strange Music,
hmm
with the caveat that Angelic, which was his third album, is kind of sort of it kind of blurs the line between pre-Strange Music, Strange Music. But I'll get
hmm
to that in just a second. So the first album, The Calm Before the Storm, just a couple of kind of cool points about the album and the songs on it. The song Questions, which is one of the songs I shared with you on the playlist,
I like that song.
was, yeah, it's the only non-Death Row artist song that was in the soundtrack for the film Gang Related,
Okay.
which was kind of like, I guess was like his big like first breakout, right? That kind of like
hmm
gave him a little bit of fame and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how like back in the day, like a lot of up and coming artists got their big break through movie soundtracks. So like the A&R people would. push out like a song or two from some unnamed artists, and then if it takes off, that's a good way. I used to love movie soundtracks because you find some really rare cuts from collaborations with certain artists and stuff on movie
I will say
soundtracks.
I've never seen gang related. I don't believe.
Hmm.
If I have, I've probably just caught like bits and pieces of it in passing or something. But
Hmm.
just looking at the soundtrack, man,
Yeah.
there are a lot of good songs on that soundtrack for that movie.
Oh yeah, I mean honestly, like a lot of soundtracks are better than the movie. Honestly, like the movie would be trash, but the soundtrack would be banging.
But yeah, I did just want to point out that like it was definitely interesting to me that he was literally the only artist not from Death Row that was like able to get on that soundtrack, which is kind of cool. So I feel like even early on, like just this first album, right, which
Hmm.
is definitely rough around the edges, but even like literally from like the first song, he's always had his talent and like his percussionist style of fast rapping, right? And that's one
Hmm.
thing I guess I want to take a moment to point out and talk about. Um, he's always had, and he talked about this in a couple interviews I watched with him, and I feel like it's especially notable early on, where his style of rapping is very percussionist instrumental, where like the words he's using and like the consonant sounds and stuff like that, the flow that he's built it around is literally is like it's hard to explain, but like the sounds match the beat. If you get what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
He rides the track, so
Yeah.
and he uses his voice and the lyrics as an instrument
Mm-hmm.
along with the track,
Yeah.
especially on with questions because I come from a long line of fast talking people, so I love speed rappers. I can understand it easily because I got people that family members that talk at that speed, like regular conversations, like I'm used to that. But questions though, I love that hook. But at one point I was like, is he saying words or is he just making noises? Because it's like, why? Why? I'm just like, huh? So I had to kind of, rewind it back a couple times. It was pretty dope. I enjoyed it though.
Yeah, and I really like at the end of that where he like it has like the back and forth with him and QD3 as they're like trying to get it right. I just
Hmm.
whenever people include those little bits in songs, I always enjoy that.
I always love
Um,
that. Absolutely.
but yeah, so I also included Mitchell Bade, and there
Hmm.
was I forget what the very first song was that I included in that playlist, but
It's like soul searching or something.
something like that. That
Yeah.
and Mitchell Bade were the first two singles he had before he released. There was like 2 years, I think, 2 to 3 years before he released "The Calm Before the Storm,"
Hmm.
which is why I kind of included not only the Mitchell Bade song but also that little intro bit where he's like playing live and like the
Hmm.
song or the fans already like know the song and are like singing the hook, which is something I thought was cool to have on like your first debut studio album. You already have like live recording of people chanting your song. It's kind of cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's pretty dope.
Um, yeah, so that was the Calm Before the Storm Part One. That will come back later on. I think in like 20, I think it's 2017 or somewhere around there. He released the Storm, which was he said the sequel follow up. Finally came around to getting to Part Two. I guess even though the Storm doesn't say Part Two.
It's kind of like the spiritual successor.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So then his second album was produced entirely by Don Juan, who, as far as I can tell, was a just a local KCMO DJ, up and coming underground kind of rapper producer
Hmm.
at the time. And
Okay.
Don Juan worked with him on several of the songs for the first two albums. And I want to say maybe one or two on the third, but maybe not. And then he just like doesn't kind of disappears from Tech's discography after that.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, these first two albums you can tell from the start, like out the gate, he has the skill set.
Hmm.
You know, he's had the fast rap style since day one, but
Hmm.
outside of the times where he's just like absolutely talking so fast, like you said, it almost kind of you have to like really listen, and it almost sounds like gibberish.
Hmm.
He does do I feel like a pretty good job, even though he's rapping really fast. If you're still able to, he's clear. You're able to understand most of what he's saying. You're able to catch it.
Yeah. Now, one thing I did find very interesting about his first couple albums, just kind of figuring out the whole Kansas City sound. The first couple of songs I kept listening to, and I was like, this really takes me back to Easy E and like West Coast music. And when you brought back, when you brought into the fact that him and QD3 and Tupac and Death Row, it's like a clear West Coast sound that he had, even though he's representing the Midwest, is more West than Midwest initially.
Yeah,
Because I had to kind of like I mean, part of my ignorance, but I had to kind of pull up a map because I was just like, hold up, Cleveland, Kansas City, like how far are they from each other? Because it kind of gave me that Bone Thugs and Harmony
Mm-hmm.
kind of sound without the harmony, and I was just trying to figure out like how that whole thing possibly kind of manifested. But I know Bone Thugs and Harmony kind of went through Easy E, which is based in Cali, and it kind of cultivated that sound, and it kind of made me think of that originally as well with Tech N9ne. The first couple songs, I was like, this has a really strong West Coast vibe, which I love. I love West Coast music. But like,
Yeah, well,
I was trying to figure out what make Kansas City like distinctive, if there was a distinctive Kansas City sound.
well, one thing I will say about, especially the first two albums, and then and kind of still on the third album too, or really honestly the first like four albums, I would say. It's hard to nail down like a specific subgenre or like specific like East Coast West Coast type sound for him
Mm-hmm.
because I mean I know I only in the playlist I only sent you like a couple songs from each album because again he has like 23 albums studio albums and each album has like 20 plus songs on it.
Yeah, that's a lot.
He's got a quite large body of work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he jumps around from like horrorcore rap to G funk rap to gangster rap to his more. I don't think he had it like labeled in his head, but definitely like it's like the pre version of like his Midwest chopper style, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know for sure if that was already a thing at the time. I feel like he kind of like pioneered that as like an
A little,
official sound, or he
yeah,
was like at least one of the pioneers of that official sound.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of pin him down, and that just because he does jump around and from song to song on each of those albums, it's like he might have one that kind of like super like kind of rock heavy, like almost like I forget. I said horrorcore, but I feel like that's not the actual genre. So it's something horror though. But he has a lot of like dark sounding, like
Mm-hmm.
scary, ominous beats, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which he definitely plays into going into his third album, Angelic,
Mm-hmm.
which is where he really got a lot of people like the image he cultivated with the big red spiked hair, and he's talking about he has songs that's like kind of talking about religion and heaven and hell and all this stuff and about fighting demons and whatnot. And a lot of people just looked at that and just especially this is like 2001 whenever this
Mm-hmm.
originally came out through JCOR. A lot of people looked at this album and was like, oh, he's some weird devil worshiper guy. He's doing some weird, crazy out there music. Didn't even really give him a chance and like listen
Mm-hmm.
to it, just wrote him off immediately,
Absolutely.
which he kind of corrects or changes course a little bit in future albums, but I'll get there momentarily. So going back to the JCOR thing, so it was Angelic was originally released in 2001 through JCOR, and pretty immediately, I think there were a lot of issues between which sorry, back up a little bit. Strange Music was founded by Travis O'Gwen and Tech N9ne
Mm-hmm.
in '99. So they had met sometime after the recording of Questions, or not Questions, sorry, The Worst. And then Travis O'Gwen is actually one of the executive producers along with QD3 on Angelic. So then whenever the album comes out, there's a lot of issues with it being promoted, and it apparently was not handled well, according to Tech N9ne and Travis, by JCOR.
Mm-hmm.
So Travis really, really, according to interviews from with both Tech and Travis that I watched, he really fought like hell to both, get them split off from JCR so they could go start their own thing with Strange Music, but also so they could keep the rights to Angelic,
Okay.
which was really cool that they were able to do that because Tech N9ne. I mean, it wasn't just JCR. There was a couple other studios that he was kind of tied up with at that point that he had worked with and produced music with, and so like they really had to go around to a few different places and like grease the wheel to make sure they got a clean break from all this. But they did it, and that's they were able to go and start and like really start building Strange Music. I'll also say this album Angelic was like their kind of his first taste of success. It would eventually go on to like dwarf both of those in sales, would dwarf the previous two albums like combined. It was also re-released in 2003 through Strange Music, as in they like put a special like title on it, like I don't know, I didn't think to write it down. But it was like re-appropriated or something, re something something. Um, Yeah, so they re-released, and I guess that makes sense because then they would be able to get all of the once they re-release it. I assume they would get all of the funds from that.
Okay. Was it a re-release or a re-recording or anything like that?
A re-release because they still
Re-
had the rights to the record, so they just
okay.
I guess waited a couple years and then they just like yeah. I couldn't. I was wondering that myself if they like tweaked anything or did anything different between the two, and I couldn't tell any differences. I couldn't
Okay.
see anything that pointed to that being the case. So as far as I know, no, they just re-released it, probably just to have it on their like catalog of stuff they've released, I assume, so they can get all the future funds from that.
Gotcha.
So after that, kind of get into now what I would dub the strange music era, which is obviously the modern era, or getting into the modern era of Tech N9ne.
Strange.
Yeah, definitely strange. So now with total control, but only themselves to blame if this whole thing went belly up. They you know really just rolled up their sleeves and just got to work. In 2002, which was just less than a year after they had released with JCOR the Angelic album, they released Absolute Power, um, which would feature future Strange Music signee Calhoun,
Hmm.
and it would have the first showing of another OG Strange Music mate, Chris Calico. He had actually
Mm.
signed with them from the beginning, but I believe this was the first song, or this was the first album that had him like featured that I could find.
Okay.
He's actually listed on this album as Big Chris Calico, and then in
Yeah.
future songs they dropped the Big.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, he's kind of you'll if you listen to Tech N9ne, you'll see his name come up a lot, and
I've
even on
noticed
songs
that.
where you don't see his name, if there's pretty much any Tech N9ne song where there's some, if you notice a guy with like a silky smooth voice singing on like the hooks or whatever, that's almost always going to be Chris Calico.
He's like what's the name? He's like his Nate Dogg, essentially,
Yeah,
like
he
like for
definitely
the
started out
hooks.
as this hype man. He's had his own solo. I think he has like 4 or 5 solo albums. Could be wrong on that because obviously this episode is about Tech N9ne, not Chris Calico. But he did, and he was a long time strange music artist. And then I believe near the end of 2021, I believe him and his wife stepped away from strange music to open his own studio or
Okay.
label. So
Okay.
but they're still. I'm sure they're still going to be collabing because they've been friends for like 3 decades plus
Yeah.
now. Seems like going on. But yeah, so I talked about how they rolled up their sleeves. One thing that, and remember this will come up a couple times, especially near the end of the episode. But they're touring. From what I could tell in interviews, both of them and of like other people talking about them, their touring is just it's insane to some degree. Like Tech N9ne and Travis are machines when it
Hmm.
comes to this touring lifestyle that they've kind of cultivated within Strange Music. I think it was the Psychomentary documentary I watched, which was like from 2008, and they talked about how like whenever they first started Strange Music, again they didn't really have anyone to support them. Any success that they made or that they found, they were gonna have to go out and make themselves. So what they did is if they were doing a show at a venue, they would show up early. They would make sure everything was set up right. They would do, the amazing, always give 110% on the show no matter what. And then afterwards, they would stay after. They would help clean up. They would provide, maybe food and water for like the staff and stuff like that. They would
Oh
go and
wow.
like shake people's hands like personally and thank them for their time and for the opportunity. And they did that every single place they went, to where it got to the point where they've now garnered a reputation in the industry as like not only like from an audience point of view amazing tours, right? They're always putting on these huge shows where they're literally building these huge like wooden wall sets, and they have people like surprise artists coming out of hidden doors and popping up out of the stage, and pyrotechnics and all this just crazy off the wall stuff. Yeah, they're also going like behind the scenes and they're taking care of the venue and they're taking care of all the people that are there to help them put on that amazing show for the fans. And that just really speaks a lot to, I feel like, their character and is a testament to like how been able to become so successful. Because it
Hmm.
definitely shows like they've put in the work and they
Yeah.
realize like, what they needed to do to go and succeed in what they were trying to accomplish. Which they've said is their plan is to take over the world,
Pink in the
which
brain.
is yeah. Um, So yeah, so then after they re-released Angelic in 2003, which was after Absolute Power, Tech would go silent for a few years as far as like personal studio release albums, like that, were Tech N9ne's official stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But during this time, Strange Music would sign Calhoun, who would go on to be like a long time Strange Music artist. That was like one of their like key players. Would go on tours with them, all that stuff. And released his first album in 2004. And Tech has like, I didn't think to count, but it's probably at least like 70% of the writing credits on the songs, and like features in at least half of them on this first album from Calhoun.
Oh
So even though he
wow.
didn't have like any of his own albums in this like couple year, 2-3 year time period, he was definitely still in studio helping out his music label mates, get started.
Mm-hmm.
Then in 2006, he would finally release Everready, which is, in my opinion, the first like, there's definitely songs from these previous albums that I like, but this was like the first album I'm like, this is like, I like this whole album. Like I like, this is like the Tech N9ne, that this is where Tech N9ne starts to get to like the Tech N9ne that I know and like loved, like whenever I first found him. Right.
Mm-hmm.
This is where that style really starts to evolve, or come out, I guess. And a lot of that is due to the producer Seven. I believe his real name is like Michael Summers, um, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, he goes by Seven, like spelled out Seven. He's been with Tech on pretty much every single album since Everready, and
Huh.
not just like been like with Tech on every album, like been the had the majority of the production credits on every Tech N9ne album, which is kind of cool. That's definitely, I think, like I was saying, this is I think Seven and Tech N9ne is them coming together is what, in my opinion, is what creates the, like I said, the Tech N9ne sound that like is it starts the modern Tech N9ne for sure.
Yeah, yeah. That kind of gave him his signature
Yeah, because
flavor or
also
whatever.
in between this time, he had cut the hair, largely in part because like the red dye and the spikes and everything was literally making his hair fall out. And
Oh
so like a lot
wow.
of fans that were like, fans of that image at first were like, "Oh man, you're selling out, blah 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 blah. You're just getting rid of the look." And he's like, "No man, like I'm still me. It's like my hair's literally falling out. Like I got to get rid of it." He had to like start all over. Um, and I couldn't like find anything that verified this, but if like nowadays he goes bald, and I think that's because of the
Mm-hmm.
spikes that he wore for like nearly a decade. I
Mm-hmm.
think that just had like long lasting effects on his hair, because he did talk about a few places where it was like thinning like a couple years after that. I saw in interviews he was talking about it. So he's actually went in in a couple interviews, he's like tried to warn some of these younger rappers that are like dyeing their hair bright colors and everything. Be like, "Look, it looks good, but just be careful. You don't want to lose your hair like I almost did."
Right.
Um, yeah. Okay. So back to Everready. Just a few cool little notes about it. Twista and Eminem were both supposed to feature on a couple of songs from this album.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, this was right around the time that Eminem's friend Proof passed away,
Yeah.
and because of complications to that, obviously he was not able to be part of that. And for Twista's verse, he for some reason was late in getting it to Strange Music, his verse, so they weren't able to master it like into the album. Like they could have done it, but they said it would have delayed the album, and they didn't want to do that. So
Mm-hmm.
again, just them sticking to their professionalism and being like, "No, this is when we're releasing it. We'll get it next time." And Tech, I don't know. I couldn't find anything if he's used that verse in it, because he's had a few songs with like Twista verses since then,
Mm-hmm.
but apparently he said that he still has that verse and he wants to use it in something. Like after Everready came out, he talked about it, how he still has it sitting around somewhere. So
Okay.
could be one of the Twista verses he's used. Could not be.
Who
Not too
knows?
sure, but Twista knows. And
You're
Tech N9ne,
right.
that's probably about it. So yeah, Everready was his first album to go gold. It went officially gold in 2020, with his first single to go gold and eventually platinum. Caribou went gold in 2012 and then platinum in 2017. Which again, Caribou is that definitely that song that kind of got me hooked and introduced me to Tech N9ne.
Man, just like looking at Everready, like just man, I miss the days when albums had like 20 songs and that was like the norm. Like
It
nowadays, like
yeah.
people will call like an album like 6 songs and like, oh yeah, this is a whole album. Like, no, it's not. That's an EP.
It is really nice. I will say, it was challenging. Listen to this entire discography for this episode. But no, I do definitely agree with you. Just in general, like it's 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 a testament to him that he's able to literally every album have 20 songs of, in general, all pretty good quality.
Hmm.
There might be one or two that you may or may not necessarily like as much or whatever, but
Yeah.
there's I don't feel like there's any that are just like straight up trash
Nah,
by any
nah.
means. Like they're all pretty consistent with
Yeah.
the usual. There's some standouts here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. And because he's like all over the place genre wise, there's something for
Mm-hmm.
every mood. Like if you're feeling, hype, or if you're feeling kind of sultry, or if you're feeling kind of like in your head about something, he has something for every situation. So I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
and I'll also say this is definitely the album. I think you get kind of there's maybe a handful of songs from the previous albums here and there, but this is
Hmm.
like the first album where it's like kind of apparent throughout how heavily he's been influenced by rock music.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of like very heavy, like I know I didn't include this in the playlist, but like Riot Maker. The one I did include in the playlist is like the Beast. Those are like very like drum heavy, just like rock and roll sound beats that he's like just tearing up on the mic over top of it. Um,
Absolutely.
which, speaking of the Beast, that would actually be gold. That would go gold as well in 2020. And yeah, just like I said, this was definitely, in my opinion, like he got rid of the spikes and he has his more rock focused sounds. It's not all rock focused, but it's definitely like a little bit, like I said, more apparent throughout. And he's working with Seven, so this is definitely the birth of modern Tech N9ne. And then like right after that, the same year actually, he drops MLK or Misery Loves Company, which
Okay.
was his first Collabos album. I included I think two songs from this album on the playlist, and I didn't include any from the other. There's like three other collabo albums just because there's some really good songs on all of the albums. Don't get me wrong, but all the collabos albums are is basically the way I look at it is just a giant strange music showcase.
Hmm.
Because he might have like a short verse, but then like on most of the songs is like the other strange music artists and featured people coming in and just like giving them a chance to kill the track. Right,
Yeah.
really cool stuff. Would recommend maybe checking out in your free time, but I already had so many songs I had to find somewhere to cut, and I decided to cut those. But this is where, and I want to kind of discuss this with you, the song that I had you listen to, "Message to a Black Man," because he talks about this in the 2008 um, documentary, and it's something I noticed like in there's like several different interviews that show him and stuff. Anytime it shows him at like a live show, the fans. This is just like scanning over in the video or whatever, but the fans seem predominantly white.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he talks about how in this documentary that was right before his album Killer, which we've not quite got there yet, but it was right before that album came out. And he talks about how he was really hoping that like that album would kind of bring his people, as he said, like
Hmm.
talking about skin color, my people, bring
Hmm.
more of my people to my shows. And he also talks about he thinks that a lot of the, like you said, because he had the crazy red hair spiked image and the kind of like devil worshiper, like just on the surface, you look at him, that's what you might think. He
Hmm.
thinks that turned off a lot of people from his own community, and they didn't really give him a chance.
1000%. Because like, here's the thing. Like I said, I vaguely remember Tech N9ne here and there popping up, but when I see spike hair, red hair specifically on a black dude, like, oh, okay, that ain't for me. So at the time, at least that's how I felt. You growing up with R&B and hip hop, anything other outside of that, especially around that time, we weren't fucking with that. Like that was some other craziness. Like you go do that, you do that best over there. You go party with them white folks. That's what you go do. But in hindsight, that was completely ignorant because like the music and stuff was, the talent was there, but it's just the aesthetics of it all. It was not inviting to say the least. It was just one of those things where it's kind of like even if you were like, how can I put it? With me being culturally like raised in religion, I'm no longer that way, but just seeing anything like that was just like, like that ain't for me, fam. Like, you go do you, nah, that ain't for me.
Yeah, he actually raps about that in some songs where he's like talking about how he has like juggalettes with bubble
Yeah,
butts at his shows and stuff like that. And like,
yeah,
on the one hand, he's such a true artist that he really does. He wants to be accepted by black people and like his community, obviously. And he talks
Mm-hmm.
about how that like he doesn't really like say out directly, but you can tell that like that kind of sits heavy on him. Like this
Mm-hmm.
earlier in the year, I feel like in recent times, as he's gotten kind of bigger,
Yeah.
he's gotten definitely more accepted.
Oh
And
yeah.
especially since he's shifted in the last 2 decades away from that aesthetic of devil worshiping and all that stuff has kind of helped him break away from that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I just think, like, again, just the optics of it all was bad. The music and the talent has always been there since day one, but it's just when you package it in that way, and that kind of turns off a subset of black people, and then also increases, another fan base of people. So, it's like if I got a choice to go see Ludacris or Marilyn Manson, I'm gonna go holler at Ludacris, not Marilyn Manson. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's so you gotta have to pick your battles. Around that time, at least in the early 2000s or whatever. Now the lines are blurred where everybody's collaborating and doing stuff with everybody. But at that time it was like you stick in this group and then you party with that group and you may reach out every now and then. But if you start doing some crazy stuff like devil worshiping and dyeing your hair red and blood everywhere. Like, okay, now you go do that over there. So, at the time, at least, like I said, the talent has always been there. It's just the packaging was a little off.
I will say I think that's probably why like growing up, like as I was like getting into tech and rap music again and all that, why I didn't really listen to like Everready was like kind of the earliest. I feel like I listened like there might have been like one or two songs from the other stuff, but I didn't really go back and listen to it. I think because like you said, I grew up in religion and everything, and just seeing that as an image probably would have. I don't have like an exact memory of doing it, but if I did come across it, I'd probably been like, no, thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, yeah, like you said, I probably just would have writ it off without giving it a chance.
exactly.
But again, um, he does seem to have finally in recent times, at least more so, come into his own. I still don't think like he's a name brand or like a household name. I don't think
He definitely seems more like a rapper's rapper, if that makes any sense.
that is. Yes, that's exactly how I would put it. He's definitely a
Yeah,
rapper's rapper.
yeah.
100%. Okay, so getting back to the discography, after Everready, he has a period. He has 3 or 4 albums that come out. I call this the silly phase. Not because it's nothing but silly songs, but this is where the albums where he does kind of experiment and do some silly songs, like the Areola song. I know I included that one for you. Ooh,
Yeah.
Areola.
Yola. Ooh, yeah,
Um,
Yola.
which is a surprisingly like catchy song that'll get stuck in your head without you realizing it.
Oh yeah.
Um, like some other songs like The Waitress, where he's like talking about how he's like hitting on a waitress while he's out with his wife or whatever. And just crazy stuff like that. Like he does still have a lot of typical Tech N9ne, fast hard hitting rhymes and raps and whatnot. But there's also just a lot more of that than what had been previously. So yeah, like I said, I dubbed this kind of the silly face from 2008 to 2011. I do still really like a lot of the serious stuff. I think I tried to include some of my favorites for the playlist for you
Hmm.
from those few albums. But yeah, not too much of like note. I mean, he was doing his thing. He was sales wise, they were all about the same. It wasn't really exploding, but it wasn't like falling off either. So he was
Hmm.
just in there in the studio doing his thing, pumping out work like he
Hmm.
has been for 30 years.
Right.
Um,
Just vibing.
just vibing. Then comes 2011 with all sixes and sevens. And if Everready was like the birth of modern tech, I feel like this album was definitely like the cementing of modern tech.
Hmm.
Um, he has Worldwide Choppers, like one.
Hmm.
Really, I feel like, everyone knew before how fast and how skillful Tech could rap, but this was like kind of like gave him, like here's your award, buddy. You've you've really showcased it, and not only did you showcase it, but you also brought in a bunch of other people to showcase it.
Okay, so I'm gonna pause you right there. We need to spend a moment and give Worldwide Choppers the respect that song deserves. This man literally got the whole world of speed rappers. He got rappers from Denmark,
Turkey,
Turkey, Yellow Wolf representing Bama, Twista, Busta Rhymes. He got what's the name? Dude from Cali, Twisted Insane to finish out the track. I mean, he got rappers from all over the world to spit these bars at lightning speed.
Mm-hmm.
That is phenomenal. And to have all of them collaborate and like dude from London like going in on some stuff, like people not even rapping in like English, but murdering it.
Well, I don't even know what language that was, but oh my god, he killed it. But yeah, man, like this album, Worldwide Choppers especially, is a great showcase of like if you were just gonna pick one song from this album, Worldwide Choppers would probably be the one. But there's just so many good songs on this album. This is really the first album that he has just a host of really big name. This is the first time he has Twista, he has Lil Wayne, he has B.O.B. I think he has T Pain on a song. Like he had kind of here and there, maybe he might have like one good feature before this, but like on an album or whatever. He might have featured with other people before this, but this is the first time like on his own album
Mm-hmm.
throughout it, and not just one or two, but like a good half or more of the songs have like big name people that he's featuring with or whatever. Well, I was gonna say, which would definitely just go on to become like a trend with his own studio albums that weren't like the collabos or collaboration albums or anything like that. Kind of trend going forward that we'll see a lot.
Absolutely, because I will say, like, of the songs you know gave me on the playlist to listen to, this album had the most songs I actually liked. So
Yeah,
like he's a mental giant, phenomenal.
he's a
World
mental
mental
giant.
giant. Worldwide Choppers, of course, phenomenal. I love music. I played that on repeat. I love that
Dun,
song.
dun, dun, dun. Oh
I
man,
love that one. T Pain, Murdered Fuck Food. Like
yeah, dude.
that.
That it honestly took me a second because again, this is one of those songs where he doesn't put who's featuring on it, like in
Mm-hmm.
the title. You just have to
Mm-hmm.
be listening and know, like, oh, that's so and so. And it actually
Mm-hmm.
took me. I've heard this song so many years, but it took me literally as I was like just going through the Wikipedia like track list discography stuff just for like my notes or whatever. And I saw because on Wikipedia, of course, it has who all featured on the song. I was like, wait, of course, T Pain's the auto tune part
Mm-hmm.
of that. It just blew my mind that like it took me so long to realize that. But again, it's if I don't see the name, I'm not gonna. I guess I don't always make the connection.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But that album, yeah, Sixes and Seven was fire. And then Mom and Them, that song right there, I like that song.
Yeah, this is probably also my favorite album, just from top to bottom. Like you said, I mean, I don't really think there's a song on here I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Or that I don't really get into as I'm listening to it. Like it's a great album. Lots of again different interesting features to listen to. Just really really strong. I think this is really like I said. This is where the modern Tech N9ne that I know and love now, or that you can point to today. This is where it got cemented and kind of like finalized that form. It's his final form, so to speak. Um, but yeah, something else was the next released album after um, all sixes and sevens. This was the one that had the strange with the doors, and it's definitely got some good songs on there. Would recommend it, but again, this is one of the songs where like, or one of the albums rather that there's nothing really like of note, like story wise in Tech's life or of making the album. It's a good album.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of the doors, which we talked about in a previous episode, so I don't want to go too deep into that. The song he did with the doors, there's not really anything super like noteworthy about it
Mm-hmm.
beyond it just being a solid album. It's a good follow up to all sixes and sevens, but not quite as strong.
Well, I will say on this album, this was the album that this was probably the first full length Tech Nine album I listened to. When
Oh,
I was
okay, and
kind
this
of
one was.
just like independently, like long before the podcast, whatever. Because I was like, okay, I've seen Tech Nine, but I never really listened to his stuff. And this came out, 2013.
Yeah,
That was,
2013.
and I was like, you know what? Let me give Tech Nine a listen. And this is when I was like, whoa, where have I been? So this is when I kind of like, okay, let me kind of go back and try to catch up on some stuff here and there. But this is the first full length album, and I think what got me was I recognized some of the guest appearances, and I'm kind of one of those people where I should be more lenient, but when I see artists and they collaborate with people I know or have been familiar with, like I'm more curious to check out the album.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
so yeah, and he had a lot of guest spots on this album. Like this is the album I think he had a lot more mainstream or notable people like CeeLo Green is on here, Big Crit is on here, The Game, Kendrick Lamar, Serge Tankian, and that's the one that really got me. Was like, okay,
Serge Tankian. Yeah.
yes. I was like, I recognize Serge Tankian. I was like, Tech N9ne. I was like, Tech N9ne's a rapper, right? So I was
Yeah,
like, hold
man.
up. So I got to
You
hear this
got
song.
down with that System of a Down, bro.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So and I was like, okay, Surge Tankian and Tech Nine. Okay, I got to hear this song straight out the gate. I will say this, listener, finish this episode first. But when you get through listening to this episode, straight out the gate and Worldwide Choppers are your two must listen to songs from Tech Nine. You if you don't like Tech Nine after this, I don't like something is wrong with you. But like just those two songs alone was like, whoa, this dude is a beast. Like
Yeah.
lyrically, creatively, just wow.
And yeah, I'm definitely gonna talk a little bit. Well, I guess I'll go and bring it up now, just because you brought it up. But yeah, his work with different like rock artists in general, like Corey Taylor is another one from Slipknot, another one of note that he's made a song with.
Hold up, hold up. Okay, so that song "Wither."
Wither with Corey Taylor, that's him singing from Slipknot, I believe.
Okay. I had no idea who Corey Taylor was.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
know
yeah,
Slipknot, but I didn't know who
yeah.
the.
So
Okay.
he's the singer from Slipknot. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah.
That's real
So
good.
again, just those. Well, the one with Serj Tankian was on this album. I think the Wither was like a 2 albums later
Hmm.
or so. I'd have to go back and look, but yeah, just again his rock influence, his love of rock music. I feel like, and how he incorporates not just those sounds but also those artists. It's just like, man, that's so cool to me.
Yeah.
Like, it's definitely, I could see a lot of people who aren't traditional hip hop fans seeing, oh, I'm a huge System of a Down fan. What is this song with Serj Tankian and Tech N9ne? What is this? And like checking it out, and like that is like such an easy gateway to like, oh, now I'm a Tech N9ne fan. Like I could see that transition happening like constantly, right? It just,
Oh yeah.
so it makes sense just with how Tech N9ne sounds and everything.
Oh yeah.
Um, Pretty cool. But yeah, definitely something else was a strong follow up to um, all six and the sevens, like you said, kind of continued having big name artists featured. Definitely kept that trend going, and did a pretty good job knocking another album out of the park right after he had basically just done it.
Hmm.
So then after that, the next album in 2015 was Special Effects, and this one was pretty important to him. He dedicated it to his mom, who had passed away, I think, the year prior. She had had lupus and epilepsy and a slew of other mental disorders and stuff, pretty much since he was like a toddler, like 2 or 3 years old, that she'd been
Yeah.
battling. Like, I think I include some of those, like,
It was a couple interludes, and then one thing about Tech Nine that I noticed, like especially like continuing like from the beginning all the way up until this point with special effects, he is very autobiographical when it comes to his rap lyrics and
from
his
the
songs.
beginning, yeah, from the beginning, he's not been afraid to rap about like real life in a real way, not like hyping it up and dramatizing it. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, this is what I'm going through. This is how I feel about it. Type stuff. That's relatable. I feel like in a lot, especially whenever he's talking about his mom in
Oh
the
yeah,
specific songs where he does. She was also a single mother. I'm just going to talk on her a little bit, just because she was a pretty big influence. Like, again, he talks about her and her battle with the diseases that she had in several of his songs, and I think you can just tell in general, like, she was just a huge influence on him and his music. But she was a single mother, had him at 16. Basically just was able to support him, give him everything. I think he has one song. I don't remember if this was a song I included in the place or not, but he has one song that's like specifically kind of like his. It's like a story of him growing up and like being a kid and stuff. And he talks about how like she got him a big wheel as like a kid, and
yeah,
like in the projects, and that was like something you didn't see in the projects, was like a big wheel, but like a young single mother, and she worked and made it happen to get him what he wanted.
yeah.
So like this
I think that was on Mama Them. Like he was talking about
might have
that as
been,
well.
yeah. Those all kind of run together in my head, unless I'm like listening to them in the moment. But um, yeah, so she was pretty big, and he dedicated this album, Special Effects, to her. And this, in my opinion, might be. I mean, I guess it's debatable. You could definitely argue one album or the other, but I feel like this is like up to this point has his biggest features to date. I could be
Mm,
wrong. Maybe I need to go back and like look at all this, compare all of them. But so yeah, so that was Special Effects again, dedicated to his mom. Another just really knocked it out of the park album. I feel like there's not really any song that I can think of on there that just like I could do without. Like they're all pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
So then he has. I'm just gonna kind of gloss over the next few albums because again they're kind of all grouped together in my head. There's definitely a few standout songs, but overall they're just he's in there again doing his thing, cooking
Mm-hmm.
up in the lab, making his standard Tech N9ne crazy flow beats and songs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, after special effects came Planet, then Nina, spelled N9ne. This one kind of stands out for the lack of 7 produced beats. Only 6 of the 21 songs were produced by 7 on this one. Got
Interesting.
a little bit. That was just interesting for me. I wanted to point that out. Then Enterfear, and then his most recent studio album, which was Asinine. I think that came out in like 2021, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Um, so Asinine was just like again chock full of featured artists. I'm blanking on the title, but the one that he has with Lil Wayne might be like it's probably like one of my favorite
Yo,
Lil Wayne verses of all
that
time.
one, oh my God. Yo, that song, Too Good?
Yeah, too good. Thank you. It's literally I'm a huge Lil Wayne fan. Have been like I'll admit Lil Wayne was like right after I was like listening to Tech N9ne early on in like middle school and like getting back into or like getting into rap. Lil
Uh-huh.
Wayne was like I think the Carter 3 came out and like that was
Mm-hmm.
just from since then I've been a huge fan of him, right? Again, this is top 3 I think verses from Lil Wayne I've ever
Oh,
heard.
no
If
doubt, no
if
doubt.
not number like 1 or 2. Like man,
Yeah,
it's so good.
it was great. It was great. So you gave me 3 songs off this album to listen to, and coincidentally, all 3 of them are back to back on the playlist, on the actual album track list, and they are phenomenal.
Yep.
Again, if you're gonna listen to Asinine, you gotta listen to tracks 3, 5. Excuse me. You gotta listen to the tracks 4, 5, and 6. Too Good with Lil Wayne and Moo Moo Fresh. That song. mm, if you ain't a hip hop head and you ain't feeling that song right there, again, something is wrong with you. It ain't that wrong with Tech N9ne or us for recommending it. That song is
Yeah.
so
Oh my
good.
god, dude.
It's
Yeah, it
so
is.
phenomenal. And No CMs, love it. Love it. Snow the product.
Snow the product kills it. Russ comes in, does his thing.
People are sleeping on Snow the product. Like this
Man, I
girl,
honestly like I've
she
heard
goes
this song.
so hard.
It wasn't until I went back and was listening to it like kind of over and over again for this episode that yeah,
Uh-huh.
man, I've been sleeping on her.
Right.
I'm gonna make it a point now that I'm done with binging tech nothing but Tech N9ne for 3 weeks. I'm gonna make it a point to go and kind of find some of her stuff and give her
You're
a
gonna
listen
have
because
to. You
man, yeah,
gotta support it.
she brought it in that song, bro.
I mean, every song she appeared on with Tech, she goes hard, if not harder than Tech. So again, Snow the product, big shouts out to her. Like she's killing the game. And on Face Off, we got to talk about the illest rapper of the game right now,
Oh, The Rock.
Dwayne motherfucking Johnson.
Bro, he couldn't even
Dwayne
get
the
through a
Rock.
single verse without promoting his tequila, man. Come on.
so I saw the track come up and I was like, okay. And I just saw Dwayne. I'm like, okay, who's this random Dwayne dude? And then like after about the third time I listened to it, I was like, is that is that the is that the damn rock?
That's The
What?
Rock.
That's
Yeah.
the rock? And like I
So
was I was so bad about this.
interesting fun fact about so on this album, the only song that the longtime collaborator producer Seven has is Face
Mhm.
Off. It's the only production
Oh,
credit he has on the entire album.
wow.
Which is interesting. I definitely feel like this album as a whole. I don't know if you've listened to other songs from this album, just because it's kind of more recent, like outside of the playlist I sent you just in the past or not. But
Mhm.
as a whole, I feel like this album, in general, the sound definitely like was shifted. It had a newer sound because a lot of the problem with why I say like these albums kind of run together is they start to sound like beat and production wise kind of
Mhm.
samey.
Mhm.
And I tried to include, like I said, the few standouts that like really were my personal favorites, and there's of course several others that just because of time and how many songs I already had, I had to cut. But
we don't have time to do a 45-hour podcast, listen to every song
man,
into
maybe
granular
one day,
detail.
maybe one day. Um, but yeah,
That's
just this
awesome.
again going back, just one last point on the production thing. I do think because uh, the sound with him and Seven that they've kind of crafted over the years has been so consistent. I guess is one way to put it.
Uh-huh.
I think that plays a part in why a lot of his most loved verses are whenever he's featuring with other people. on other people's tracks that have been produced by a variety of producers and artists and whatnot.
Hmm.
Um, could be wrong in that. That's kind of what I'm leaning towards. Might be. I think it at least plays a part for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with that, and actually, I kind of took some notes on that as well, because like in addition to this playlist, we had a playlist of him doing features, guest spots on other people's records, and I think that's when Tech N9ne shines the most. Either when he's collaborating with people on his own projects, or if he's guest spotting on somebody else's, because there's like a sense of competition, and you can tell that like even after 30 something years, he still has that hunger to be the
Oh yeah.
best no matter what, and that's something good to hear. And then
Hmm.
also the juxtaposition between his rapping style and the other styles, and how he can bob and weave into
Dude.
any kind of
Yeah.
genre, any kind of artist. He can just join in and just like body it regardless. And I love
So
that.
first of all, perfect segue because literally I was about to dive into talking about the features that he's been a part of, both having or being on. But yeah, like you said earlier, dude, he's a rapper's rapper to the point where pretty much everyone that he's ever worked with and collaborated with on a song has nothing but like huge respect and like mad props to give the guy. Um, and again, like we were just talking about, um, I'm blanking on R.A. the Rugged Man or R.A. or something like that. He's a white rapper that honestly I hadn't heard of before I started researching this. Um, he's actually not bad, at least in this song that he has with Tech N9ne and Chris Calico. But he was talking about in an interview, he was getting called out for fans who were saying like, "Oh man, you don't have that fast flow. You can't come with it like that." And so he was like, "No, I can. I can totally come with that fast flow. It's just not my typical style." And so he was thinking, he's like, "Who can I get to like help me demonstrate that?" And of course, Tech N9ne. So like, I guess he had already knew Tech N9ne beforehand or whatever. But he called Tech N9ne and was like, "Hey man, people are saying I can't rap fast. I want to do this like super fast song." And what Tech N9ne said was, "Yeah, dude, yeah, yeah. In fact, what I'm gonna do is on my verse, I'm gonna rap slow. I'll break down and like go at a slower pace so that whenever you come in after me and you just kill it, it really highlights how you're able to." So like on the one
That's
hand,
dope.
he does come in and like just because I think if you're an artist and like you look at Tech N9ne, he's just like Eminem talked about in an interview. He's just so proficient, and he's literally crafting every single syllable of every single line like perfectly. Um, and if you're an artist, you have to respect that, right? And you have to like know like he's gonna bring it because that's just what Tech N9ne does. He puts in the work 150% every hour, every day that he's working.
Absolutely.
He is trying to do to upcoming rappers like today
Hmm.
what he wished people would have done for him. As the
Yeah.
vibe that I definitely get.
Yeah.
Um, because like a couple of the songs I included in that featured playlist that I sent you, like NF and Token in specific. I watched an interview where they were the interviewer was with Token, where the interviewer was asking like, how did that, you and Tech N9ne, how'd that come to happen? And he said he just got a phone call from a random number he didn't know one day. Normally he wouldn't answer it, but he's like, "Oh, I'll see who it is." And so when he answers the phone, and all he hears is "murderer," he was like, "What? Who is this? What?" And he's like, "It's Tech N9ne." And so they just like went from there, and like called him out. I think called him out to like or maybe while he was like touring, Token was touring, like stopped by, or they met in person a few times, and he talked about
Hmm.
how like they spent like just hours, just like one on one talking on the tour bus, like just Tech just giving him advice and talking about how like because again Tech tours a lot, and
Yeah.
Strange Music in general tours a lot. And so yeah, just like giving advice on like just how to be successful and like how he's managed to be successful in the industry, which again is just like really cool that he's kind of like giving back to up and coming artists, which I love to
Yeah.
see. You love to
Yeah.
see that camaraderie in the industry.
Yeah. Especially with a veteran like him, he's been in the game for.
Yeah, for so long, he's definitely an OG. Like he
Yeah.
knows what works and what doesn't, like what you need to do to be successful for the most part.
Absolutely.
But yeah, man, just that's pretty much I mean, there's so many other songs, so I could really, if I wanted to, we could have like got down in the nitty gritty. But he's still in the lab today, cooking up stuff. He just, like I said earlier, he came out with a single recently. He's had a few singles that are coming out of, as of recording this, his somewhat soon to be released LP titled Bliss.
Okay.
Um, and that same like post music video after party YouTube thing he did, he
Hmm.
talked about how that album is, or that LP, I guess, is done. Like he's done recording for it. It's in the mastering stages. So potentially by the time this episode airs, that might be out already, which will be pretty cool. Because again, I'm a huge fan, and more tech is awesome. But yeah, even though he's been in this industry for so long, like you listen to him in interviews, and you may not think it because he has this super fast, almost aggressive, in your face style in most of his songs, but he's actually a very soft spoken, humble, down the earth dude. He talks, manually. One thing he has the only time he does this type of word use is whenever he's talking about, what I'm saying, and sometimes he'll go, you know what I'm sizzling. I considered saying that, like just sprinkling that throughout the episode just to see your eyebrow kind of quirk up a little bit, but I decided not to. Um, Maybe I should. It would have been funny, but yeah, man, he still has things to say. He's still very much, like you said, autobiographical, and a ton of his songs, ton of his music is still true to life and relatable and connectable in a way that a lot of artists maybe don't dig deep enough into themselves to pull that stuff out all the time. So it's always nice to see. And yeah, man, I'm just in general excited to see what all heights he's gonna, because it seems like his over his career, his trajectory is nothing but up, right? So I'm excited to see how high is he gonna go,
Oh
man. What
yeah.
all else is he gonna accomplish? Who else is he gonna get to work with? Who else is he gonna like pull up into the spotlight and like introduce me to? Because I'll go ahead and tell you, NF and there's a few others that I had not heard of until I'd like heard them on Tech N9ne, and then that forced me to like go and listen to them like a little
Hmm.
bit more. So I kind of skipped over it, but there was a one song, Dr. Sabah with Land and
Yeah.
Fire.
Yeah.
Just real quick before I finish closing, I just want to talk about that because that kid was 13
Okay.
on the
So
recording of that.
that's what I kind of figured because I was listening to the lyrics and I was like, okay, I know there's a reason for it, like how he did the song, and then I was listening to Landon's lyrics and I was like, is this a kid? And Tech is
Yeah,
talking about how he's old and people think he's like getting like Botox to stay young, and then he has this kid that's like chopping it up and killing it, and I'm
like
just
yeah, man. And
that
he
was
was only
phenomenal.
13, so like I'm really excited to see. Like I think he's featured in a couple. He featured on a couple songs from that album, I know, with Tech
Hmm.
N9ne, but I don't know if he's like done anything else since then.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, man, I'm just super excited to see what's next for Tech, man. After we got this LP coming out, and then what all can he accomplish? I'm excited for it.
Yep, I'm excited for Bliss. And you know what's going to give me some bliss is if you hit the subscribe button and
Oh
hit the
yeah,
like button
share that,
and share
share
all
that
that.
episode.
Yeah, absolutely, and maybe tag Tech in it. Let
Yeah,
him know
man.
that we appreciate his artwork, and his career has not gone unnoticed, and we like to do these deep dives mainly for our own curiosities and also exposure as well to let people know there's a lot of noise out there, but there's some good people that are still, in the game, have been in the game that you may not even know.
Yep.
So I definitely agree with that. So anywho, thanks for the rundown on Tech. I feel like even though listening through his music, I feel like I kind of understood his life story going in chronological order from his, beginning songs to the more recent, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, thanks for doing a thorough breakdown of his discography and going into the weeds.
You guys will be able to see on the song like notes or list that we'll post with the episode, but there's quite a lot, quite a lot
Yeah,
of songs between the discography journey and the big list of featured, both songs he's featured on and songs he had, or songs where he's had people feature on his songs. It's quite a big
it,
list. I tried to be thorough without completely overdoing it. I think I maybe overdid it just a little bit, but we had the extra time, so
yeah,
in
yeah.
between
Why not?
episodes,
Yeah,
went
yeah.
ahead, why
It
not?
was it was worth it. So anyway, thanks for listening to the show. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and YouTube at After Listen Pod. And you can visit us on our official website, afterlistenpod.com, for links and previous episodes. Keep listening. Appreciate you. Bye.
Bye.
Keep sizzling.
Keep sizzling. That's it.